And joining us now to talk more about this is Democratic strategist Matt Bennett and former press advisor to then House Speaker John Boehner. Maura Gillespie. It's good to see you guys. Maura, let's talk about what Elena and John started off with, which is the potential that Chicago is bracing for a surge of federal forces, that Donald Trump has really changed his focus here. I mean, the president has said that federal forces are needed to combat crime in Chicago, or maybe it has to do with immigration enforcement. It's like a choose your own adventure, it seems, with the reasoning. Illinois' lieutenant governor, who will be on with us later in the show, has sent out on social media what you would think some people believe really could be motivating this, or at least she believes is he's baiting us, is what she'd sent out. The political ramifications of this, though, do you see it as the same as D.C. or different?
Well, I think the motivation's a little bit different. I think with D.C., the president lives there. They're also preparing for America 250 next year. And so celebrations that will be happening. He wants to clean up the city. It's not uncommon. We've seen mayors and governors do that in the past. I know in New Jersey, Governor Christie Whitman, she did the same thing with trying to clean up Camden before big events were happening. And so, it's not uncommon. And I do think that the messaging aspect of it is key here. Going against saying, we don't need the federal government to step in after having one of the most violent weekends is not the most, but it was a violent weekend for Chicago. So this proposal for the president to do so does have a couple different political motivations behind it. But the messaging, if you're going to say that you don't need help, okay, well, then what are you doing to resolve the issue? And I think that this National Guard send-in is a Band-Aid. It's not a long-term solution, because our National Guard doesn't need to be used in this way. So what are we doing to make our city safer, our community safer? Resources is probably where I would start, and training. So I think the political ramifications comes down to messaging and how we're looking at solving a problem, rather than just putting guards that don't need to be there in place.
Matt, it's like a strange question I have of, is it missing the forest for the trees, or is it forest and trees that both need to be focused on here? Because you have a violent weekend like Chicago did. But you also very clearly, if you're looking at the motivation, if the governor of Illinois, if what he said on Sunday still stands, that no one from the administration has reached out to anyone in his administration about offering any help, that's kind of the beginning and end of what you need to know in terms of what's motivating, or what the president's really trying to do here. What do you think? I mean, let's say there is a better, more collaborative way to offer federal help. Probably everyone can agree yes, but even still, Democrats pushing back in the right way, do you believe?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because Democrats have to be very careful. If we deny that crime is a problem in cities like Chicago, first of all, we're just wrong. And second of all, we're missing where voters are, as we often do. Rahm Emanuel, who used to be the mayor of Chicago, used to say, no one ever said to me, I feel 23% safer because crime is coming down. Statistics do not do anything. So Democrats have to be very careful to say, look, crime is a serious problem. If the president is serious about helping with the crime of Chicago, there's all kinds of things he could do, as you note. He could send us resources. We could hire more cops. That's what the mayor of Washington said. Instead, he's sending in the National Guard, which, by the way, it is illegal for the National Guard to do law enforcement. We have a law against that, the Posse Comitatus Act. And so what we got in Washington is Guard members either standing around or doing gardening and picking up the trash for $1 million a day, which is what the deployment is costing. So it's a huge waste of money. It's illegal. And it's not the way to fight crime. Democrats need to be clear. Yes, crime's a problem. Yeah, we could use federal help. This isn't it.
Ron Brownstein really took an interesting slice of this. He says that this is really one example of the one word that Democrats are using on repeat right now, which is it's a distraction. But Ron's point is, he argues that he sees evidence that one word, as he puts it, has created the most significant fissure between the party's grassroots and its Washington leadership. That one word now divides the principal competing theories of how Democrats should respond to Trump's militant second term. Like Democratic congressional leaders using it to try and say this is a distraction, we need to focus on the economy. Trump's trying to distract from the economy. But party activists are saying that kind of dismisses the urgency of the sweeping actions he's taking, eroding American democracy. What do you think?
Look, I haven't talked to a single Democrat, either in Congress or in the kind of national Democratic ecosystem, who doesn't think that the threats that Trump is posing to everything that we care about, including kind of core basic democratic principles, is enormous and existential. Every single Democrat thinks that. There are different ways of approaching this. And the problem for Democrats in Washington is they just don't have a lot of levers to pull. They don't have any agency. They can't stop a lot of the things that are happening. By contrast, people like Governor Newsom in California, he had something he could do. He could do the redistricting plan that he's proposing in California, so he could actually take action. I do think there's a divide between those who want Democrats to be more robust in their response to Trump, but they're kind of yelling, don't just stand there, do something, when in a lot of cases, there's not a lot that Democrats can actually do besides use rhetoric.
And yell, don't just stand there and do something. Guys, we've got to leave it there at this moment, but it's great to see you. Thank you so much, Maura. Thanks, Matt. John.